Hi everyone, Michelle here from michellesmidheaven.com, and today I want to take a look at the solstice chart. So that is the chart for the exact time that the sun moves into Cancer on June 21st, and also what that could mean for your personal chart. Now, the Cancer solstice is such an important event on the so-called Wheel of the Year. As for astrologers who use the tropical zodiac, like I do, in contrast to sidereal astrologers, it's the path of the sun that determines the division of the zodiac. And I think it's always a good idea to understand some basic astronomical observations because they are going to lead us to some very straightforward, easy interpretations. As soon as the sun's path, from our perspective here on Earth, crosses the celestial equator in March, that is where 0 degrees of Aries begins. And then every day the sun rises higher and higher above the celestial equator in the northern hemisphere toward the Tropic of Cancer. That's exactly why it's called the tropical zodiac, right? We're simply following the sun's path from our perspective, our experience here on Earth, and the lines of the tropics mark the farthest north and south where the sun can appear directly overhead at noon during the year. So right now, the sun is reaching the highest point of his journey in relation to our planet's equator projected out into space. That's the celestial equator. And that marks a pivotal point. So symbolically, it's very clear. It's literally a turning point because the sun is no longer ascending. The sun is now starting his long journey downward in relation to the celestial equator. And this ascent versus descent is what's symbolically meaningful for us. The solstice point marks a significant turning point. The sun is changing direction, and that means that we are changing direction. It can be as simple as that. It's a first interpretation in the most general, basic way. That's easy, right? It symbolizes how we've been slowly building up something and we've gained a lot of experience. And now the question in the coming months is going to be, well, what are we going to do with that experience? So the first thing that you can do for yourself is think of what has been building up for you since the beginning of the year. What has changed for you? Usually there's at least one theme that has to do with where you would like to be in your life. Something that has kept you busy, something that was always present no matter what other things happened in the foreground. So I invite you to think of your most obvious motivations, the thing that makes your life path your unique life path. What do you feel gives you a sense of purpose in your life? And think of how that is unfolding right now. Has anything been unfolding there since the beginning of the year? And please let me know in the comments. I always appreciate your comments. Have you gained more clarity about something? And more importantly, maybe, what have you learned over the past 6 months? Because now is the time to really start owning it, start practicing it. That is the pivotal part of the solstice. We're putting theory into practice, and we're going to do that more and more until it becomes our second nature. The solar year is about mastering something, right? And the turning point is actually when you, as a student of life, turn into a teacher, so to speak. You received or you gained something, and now you can offer it to others, or there is something that you feel you want to share. You accomplished something over the first half of the year, and now you can relax and enjoy the fruits of your work. And you know, it doesn't need to be anything that sounds super spectacular to other people. It can be a new insight that was helpful, right? Something that offered some clarity on who you are and where you want to be. And typically, it has to do with something that your natal sun is pointing to. So take a look at where the sun is located in your natal chart, as well as where the sun's domicile sign, Leo, is located. Those houses in your chart could give you some clues as to where a slow but relatively steady development has been brewing in the first half of the year. So I invite you to take a moment to contemplate that. It might be insightful. And while this solar rhythm is, of course, something we experience each year, the sky is always going to look different. The sun is always at 0 degrees of Cancer, but the other planets are going to be in different places compared to last year. And what I like to pay attention to is any aspects that are forming in the ingress chart, in the solstice chart, because those connections between the planets are indicating what kind of events and themes we can expect for the coming months. So first, let's take a look at those aspects because I feel there is something very, very interesting happening in this year's chart, or actually two things. First of all, I am very happy to see the moon briefly breaking up Mercury's ongoing enclosure. I talked about the enclosure in another video, right? So the moon is sending out a ray right before Mercury, which means she's effectively breaking up Mercury's enclosure between Mars and Saturn. She's about to form a sextile to Mercury. You'll notice that the moon is at 23 degrees and 16 minutes in Virgo, and Mercury is at 23 degrees and 36 minutes in the sign of Cancer. And this is my second point as to why this is interesting, because after making that sextile to Mercury, the moon will translate the light from Mercury to Mars. She translates the light. That's how ancient astrologers called this movement, this dynamic. And to me, this looks like a very, very favorable dynamic in the ingress chart because here's what's going on. Normally, we would expect Mercury to be moving closer and closer to a sextile with Mars. However, Mercury is currently moving very slowly and actually slowing down because he's preparing to station retrograde 8 days after the solstice. And as a result of that, Mercury will never actually reach Mars. And this phenomenon is known as refrenation. It appears as though Mercury is applying to the sextile with Mars, but the aspect never perfects. It's because at the moment Mars is moving faster than Mercury. So, what does this normally mean, this refrenation? Usually, it would be another strong indication that certain mercurial matters may not be able to move forward, such as paperwork, important conversations that need to happen, the organization and logistics of your plans, and so on. Very similar to the malefic enclosure I talked about recently, right? We can think of Mars being associated with the energy that is needed to start something new, the energy to assert ourselves, and so on. And the perfection of an aspect always signifies that something is happening. Aspects basically mean activity. So in this case, since Mercury cannot reach Mars, it looks as though the action cannot be taken. Plans may fall through because people change their minds. You change your mind, you discover at the last minute that something is impossible, or circumstances beyond your control interfere and you find obstacles. You may have organized everything carefully, but there are unexpected factors that prevent the result you anticipated. Those would be our typical examples of refrenation. Mercury cannot reach Mars. The conversation you expected may not happen. An opportunity may fail to present itself. A financial transaction may not be completed, or a sale may nearly go through before an obstacle appears. These are all good examples, I think, of Mercury-Mars frustrations. And hopefully, when that kind of frustration happens, you can also laugh about it and not let it get to you. You know, I lost my keys the other day and I had to call a locksmith to unlock two doors for me. And I was like, okay, Mercury is in a malefic enclosure. This is it. Here we go, right? Life is just so much better when it's sprinkled with some astrology, I guess. But the real good news here is that the refrenation is different now because here's the thing. In the solstice chart, the moon's translation of the light from Mercury to Mars looks very much like mediation. And keep in mind that I'm talking about the solstice chart, which has a very long impact, right? For me, that impact can ripple out all the way until the next solstice in December. So the moon here appears to indicate a great window of relief. She gives us a window of opportunity amidst some potential frustration. It can almost be like finding the needle in the haystack or discovering that one narrow opening, that tiny bit of luck where something can still happen at the very, very last minute. Even though Mercury is slowing down and cannot reach Mars directly, the moon carries Mercury's light forward and brings it to Mars anyway. And in that sense, the moon acts like a mediator, transmitting Mercury's message, Mercury's help or agenda to Mars when Mercury cannot make the connection on its own. And that symbolizes some really nice possibilities. The moon is playing a very important role here, and in practical terms, the moon can sometimes show up as a person who steps in to help you. And because the moon is often associated with women, this could literally be a woman offering support. And with the moon in Virgo, I do get that feeling of someone stepping in with a logical, practical helping hand just when you need it. To me, this signature is clearly saying, do not be afraid to reach out to someone when you need help. If you've been frustrated with something, if something isn't working out for you, know that help is available. If not right now, then definitely in the coming months. And know that something can still come together, even if at first looks impossible. Maybe it happens through another person, or maybe it comes through a sudden stroke of luck that changes a situation just like that. Now, that's what I would say in general for all of us about this solstice chart. But we can make it a little more personal. Ingress charts like this one were traditionally used in mundane astrology. They would cast a chart for the capital city of a country to gain insight into what may unfold for the nation, its people, finances, politics, and broader public affairs, let's say. However, you can also apply this technique to your natal chart. And you can do that by simply casting the ingress chart for your birthplace. So when you've got a chart for the sun entering 0 degrees of Cancer at your birth location, take a look at the sign rising on the ascendant. The sign that has the ascendant, so the sign in the first house of that chart, will take on extra importance for you until the next solstice in December. So, how would you interpret that? Well, to find out what that sign on the ascendant really means for you personally, simply look at where that sign falls in your natal chart. It's going to be different for everyone. Which natal house does that sign fall into? The topics associated with that house are likely to come to the foreground. For example, let's say that you cast the Cancer ingress chart for your birth location and you see that the ascendant happens to fall into, let's say, Sagittarius. That means that now you can look for Sagittarius in your natal chart and think of the house topics that are represented by Sagittarius. Those topics might come into play, especially when the degree of the ascendant also happens to fall onto one of your natal planets. Then this solstice is going to be very important for you. And remember, the solstice chart is about a turning point, a change of direction. And on top of that, the chart is telling us that we will get help somehow. This help may be necessary for us to take that next step so we can share our experiences or bring something valuable into this world, something that is meaningful to us that we can share with others. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. And don't be afraid to reach out to me if you would like me to help you make sense of your own chart. I offer chart readings, so personal readings, synastry readings, those are relationship readings, horary analysis where you can ask a concrete question, and of course you can learn astrology with me. I offer tutoring and mentoring to beginners as well as to advanced students. You know where to find me at michellesmidheaven.com. And for now, I want to thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me out. Thank you so much. Until next time.